The official history states that the collapse of the Romanov dynasty ended in a basement in Yekaterinburg in July 1918. But the true, horrifying aftermath of Imperial Russia was scattered across the vast, frozen wilderness of Siberia, a place where the final secrets of the Tsars mingle with modern pandemic threats and a hidden cache of imperial gold. For the UK audience, deeply familiar with the Black Death and the royal intrigue surrounding the execution of Nicholas II, whose cousin was King George V, this is a story that bridges centuries, from the expansionist terror of Peter the Great to the final fatal journey of Nicholas II, all within a landscape now being destabilized by a climate crisis. This is a story of three chilling, connected Siberian mysteries. Part 1. The Ghost of the Romanov Treasure and the Frozen Lake. The Tsar's Final Fortune. In 1917, as the Bolshevik Revolution tore through Russia, Czar Nicholas II and the entire Romanov imperial family were exiled first to Tobolsk and then to Yekaterinburg, Siberia. But before their fatal journey, a vast treasure, the amassed wealth of the empire, including imperial jewels, millions in gold bullion, platinum, and the infamous Fabergé eggs, was frantically moved east for safekeeping. The Bolsheviks seized much of this state treasure, but a substantial portion, estimated at over 500 tons of gold, belonging to the state and the Romanovs personally, fell into the hands of the counter-revolutionary White Army, led by Admiral Alexander Kolchak. This gold, often referred to simply as the Tsar's gold, was the financial lifeblood of the anti-Bolshevik effort. It was transported across Siberia via the Trans-Siberian Railway, packed into hundreds of chests and boxes, carried by dozens of heavily guarded railway wagons. Its journey was a brutal, desperate race against the Bolshevik forces and the brutal Siberian winter. The ice bridge of Lake Baikal. The journey reached its climax in the winter of 1919-1920 near Lake Baikal, the world's largest, deepest, and oldest freshwater lake. Kolchak's forces, known as the White Guards, were attempting a desperate retreat. To bypass Bolshevik-held rail lines, they made a fatal decision: to lay temporary railway tracks directly across the frozen surface of Lake Baikal, which in winter could freeze several feet deep. The wagons were impossibly heavy, packed with gold, weapons, and panicked soldiers. As the column moved across the vast, treacherous ice, the weight, combined with seismic activity or simply the natural stress of the massive lake, caused the ice to crack and splinter. In a cataclysmic moment, often lost to the chaos of the Russian Civil War, dozens of heavily laden wagons, possibly carrying the bulk of the imperial gold, plunged into the abyssal depths of Lake Baikal. The cold was so intense that many of the soldiers guarding the treasure reportedly froze solid on the surface before they could drown. The lake became the final silent tomb for the Romanovs' final fortune. Part 2. The Plague Pits. Peter the Great's Time Capsule of Terror. The architect of modern fear. While Nicholas II's treasure lies at the bottom of a lake, a far more terrifying legacy was established 2 centuries earlier by his ancestor, Tsar Peter the Great, 1682 to 1725. Peter, the architect of the Russian Empire, drove expansion deep into the harsh eastern frontier of Siberia. This expansion brought wealth, but it also brought death. The sprawling, crowded new frontier towns and garrisons were frequently ravaged by highly virulent strains of the bubonic plague, often carried by rodents and trade along the new routes. Peter the Great's response to these outbreaks, particularly in the north of Siberia, was dictated by military precision and harsh necessity: mass burial. To contain the spread of the disease, authorities ordered thousands of victims to be swiftly interred in deep communal plague pits, often lined with lime and hastily covered. The permafrost vault. Crucially, in the northern reaches of Siberia, many of these pits were dug directly into the permafrost, the layer of ground that remains permanently frozen for thousands of years. Unknowingly, Peter the Great's administrators created perfect, deep-freeze biological vaults. The cold, oxygen-depleted environment of the permafrost acts as a magnificent preservative, not just for bodies, but for microbial life. For 3 centuries, these pits have held the remains of the dead and, more chillingly, intact ancient DNA, aDNA, of the Yersinia pestis bacterium. This phenomenon is not theoretical. In 2016, an anthrax outbreak in the Yamal Peninsula of Siberia was definitively linked to the thawing of permafrost, which exposed the carcass of an infected reindeer that had died decades prior. The ancient spores were reactivated, sickening local populations and killing livestock. The genetic doomsday clock. The contemporary scientific interest, particularly in the UK and Europe, centers on the genetic time bomb contained within these pits. Historical medical experts and geneticists equipped with advanced sequencing technologies have studied aDNA retrieved from historical remains, often teeth, where the bacteria is best preserved. The chilling discovery is twofold. Unknown virulence. While modern plague strains exist, the ancient strains sealed in the permafrost, strains responsible for the Black Death, which killed up to 60% of Europe, may possess different, potentially more lethal genetic codes that modern immune systems have never encountered. Climate instability. The Siberian permafrost is melting at an accelerating rate due to global warming. As the frozen ground retreats, it exposes these plague pits along with ancient animal carcasses and soil layers. The fear is not just of localized outbreaks, but of a fully preserved, highly virulent historical plague strain escaping into the modern global ecosystem. The pits of Peter the Great are no longer just historical footnotes. They are a clear and present threat, a testament to how the history of infectious disease is physically linked to the rapidly changing climate of the 21st century. Part 3. The Tunguska Event. The Cosmic Unknown in the Tsar's Last Days. The Heavenly Catastrophe. Just 10 years before the Romanovs were executed, and as Russia was already beginning to collapse under internal and external pressures, the nation experienced a cosmic event that remains the largest impact explosion in recorded history, the Tunguska Event, June 30th, 1908. The explosion occurred high over the desolate taiga of central Siberia. The scale of the destruction, 80 million trees flattened over 830 square miles, was apocalyptic. Yet the event occurred in such a remote area that it barely registered with the imperial administration in St. Petersburg at the time. Eyewitnesses, mostly scattered indigenous Evenki people, reported blinding fireballs, seismic shock waves, and intense heat. For days afterward, European cities experienced strangely bright night skies due to the dust and gases injected into the upper atmosphere, a ghostly prelude to World War I. The Scientific Cold Case. When the first scientific expedition, led by Soviet mineralogist Leonid Kulik, finally reached the remote site in 1927, they found the mystery's defining feature: no impact crater. At the blast's epicenter, trees were standing upright but scorched and stripped bare, indicating an airburst, an explosion high above the ground. The most accepted scientific theory today suggests a comet nucleus or stony asteroid exploded several miles in the atmosphere, vaporizing completely and delivering a blast force estimated between 10 and 15 megatons of TNT. However, the complete lack of physical debris has fueled decades of exotic speculation, including the idea of a small black hole collision or even the fantastical notion of an alien energy source. Tunguska remains the ultimate example of a world-changing event where the object responsible simply vanished. The Tsarist foreshadowing. The Tunguska event serves as a terrifying cosmic counterpoint to the political chaos of the Tsarist era. While Nicholas II was preoccupied with internal dissent and wars, an object from space delivered a thermonuclear-scale warning shot just hours away from populated areas. A slightly different trajectory, and the event could have devastated a European capital, fundamentally altering the course of the 20th century. It is a chilling reminder that the fate of empires, whether through internal collapse or external cosmic force, can be decided by chance, a theme that deeply resonates with the fragility of power, a common motif in British and European history. Conclusion: the unconquered land and the ticking clock. The Siberian interior is more than just a geographic feature. It is the ultimate vault of Russian history, preserving the three great forces that shaped the nation and now threaten the world: wealth, pestilence, and cosmic power. The Romanov gold lies frozen in the abyssal dark of Lake Baikal, symbolizing the tragic, abrupt end of imperial wealth. The plague pits hold the genetic blueprints of epidemics past, posing a chilling immediate threat to modern health security brought on by our own actions in the climate crisis. The Tunguska blast remains an eternal scientific enigma, reminding humanity that our greatest existential risks often come without warning from the silent void. To the UK audience, this story is a mirror. The Black Death that swept London is genetically linked to the bacteria now thawing in Siberia. The imperial tragedy of Nicholas II holds an echo in the depths of Lake Baikal. Siberia remains the unconquered land, where the distance between the collapse of an empire and a future pandemic is measured only in the retreat of the ice. The secrets of the Tsar and the terror of the unseen pathogen are breaking free, urging a modern world to look closely at the frozen history that is now rapidly becoming our future.